Alright boys, welcome back to the channel. This is a little bit of a different scene than what we're normally used to on the channel, but today we're actually going to be starting to work on the wiring harness to install a double DIN Bluetooth, Android Auto, Apple CarPlay stereo into the good old 9.5. So there's a forum on Saab Central that I'm following here, so I'm going to follow along with you guys. Alright, so my battery died there, sorry about that. So there's an entire order here, so we'll start from the top here. What's called the amplifier pre-outputs, which is from the harness of the radio and the Metra wire harness that is linked. Everything's gonna be linked below, and this is what goes into the factory harness. So there's two versions. There's an 8.6 version and an 8.4, the last digits. Obviously the difference between them is having the RCA cables and not having the RCA cables. And in this case, we're using the 8.6, the last two digits, because both the harness from the radio and the Metra have the RCA cables right there ready to roll. So in this case, in the example on the forum, they're using the 8.4, but regardless, the hookups are the hookups. All right, guys, so I can tell you right now straight up why nobody's ever really done an in-depth video on installing these double DIN radios, because there's a lot of instructions, a lot of figuring out, and to just do a clean-cut video is almost impossible. So here's what I've done. I've done most of the figuring out off camera, and I'm going to just try to explain to you what I've done here. So I have this on the floor laid out. It's not finalized, but this is the Meta harness that you buy. This goes into the factory harness, and this harness here and this harness here go into the radio. And I'm not finalizing the install today because I ordered GLIs, which are ground isolator noise reduction, which I will put in between the RCA cables to eliminate popping noises and white noises. So that's on the way. And I also had to order an adapter for the radio antenna to attach to the factory harness. So that's kind of where this is at right now. I'll go into more detail on all these harnesses, but the blue is your power for the amplifier, your ground is your ground, and then your yellow is the battery lineup, and then your red is your ACC, which is not going to go into the factory harness. We're going to wire this into the power steering, the headlight wiring harness next to the power steering, next to the steering wheel. So we'll go into that later on in the video. So that's kind of like a brief update on all this. All these wires here do not get used, and I did actually test the power with the wiring here with the red wire here, just to see if this was working and getting sound to all of the speakers, which we were properly. So that's all situated properly. Now, it's not finalized, and we'll finalize it later in the video, but that's kind of just like a rundown. It seems messy and a little intimidating, but it's not as bad once you get started. All right, so we are in the car. I got the factory radio out using some nails and some patience. And then, of course, here is the holder for the radio that's in the car. You just, this has got some tabs right here on the side that nicks onto the wall there. Right here. So you just kind of get a screwdriver in there, bend it out and pull it out. And then of course your harnesses are attached on the back side, and as you can see, you just got some clips on all of them that you squeeze to release from the cage. Now that Metra harness with the RCA cables plugs into here, so I'll show you that later on in the video, like I said. And then of course I have an aftermarket mounting kit, and then of course our brand new radio, which is a little bit smaller than the size here because it doesn't have the CD player in there like the factory radio does. Now, I could have ordered one that did, but I didn't want to, because if you guys look, this is very compact, and I kind of wanted it to be that way so I can get all the harnesses in here nice and neatly and not have a big mess pushing back against this. So that's the inside. And like I said, I tested the radio to see if my current setup was working, and everything was working, obviously without sound of radio because of not having the antenna, but I moved the sound from the forward into the back, and all speakers are working, so that is solid. So let me just give this a couple days here, and as those other harnesses come in, the GLIs, the ground isolating, whatever that stuff is, I'll plug it in, and kind of give you guys an update. So I'm hoping this is educational for you. Reading all the diagrams and all the forums on this can be confusing and hard to remember everything. So like I said, it's just best to just get in it. But this video, I hope to clear up most of it and keep it pretty easy. So let's rock it out. All right, guys, so we have our ACC line, the power line, tapped in to the headlight switch, okay? Now, that's powering everything up. And then we have our battery, which is our constant power. We have our ground. And then, of course, we have all of our RCA cables, which I mentioned earlier. We're going to get a GLI put in on both of those to eliminate white noise and kickback feedback. Now, the other thing that we're going to do here, if you notice, I can't set up the Bluetooth because the radio thinks we're driving. So there's a harness, there's a wire here. This blue and yellow striped wire is supposed to be wired into the parking brake, which we're not going to do, and we're going to actually hardwire this into the ground to trick the system into allowing me to use the Bluetooth without putting the e-brake up. So I'm just going to put you on a quick pause here, and we're going to just tap, we're going to shorten this line because obviously it doesn't need to be this long, and we're just going to wrap it up into our ground wire there. And just so you guys know, at the end we're going to solder everything and make sure this is all like legit and solid, because this ain't leaving the car once it's set in there. Stay tuned here. All right, guys, so today we're going to finally make some progress. We got a lot of everything we need except for the antenna component, which is coming in later today. So hopefully we can get that done in this video, but here we go. So just so you guys know, and as you can see, this harness, this factory harness, has been played with before from one of the previous owners. It looks like they also had an aftermarket radio in here at some point, because this is the blue wire we need to attach the white wire for the steering control module to have everything programmed accordingly. So, and as you can see, everything here is situated. So the only thing that seems to be missing from the factory harness, which is not there, is the yellow battery line. So what happens is when I turn the radio off without this, with this current setup, and I turn the car off and on, it does not save the settings. The reason why that's happening is because for some reason there's no battery wire there, and it's not getting a constant power to the radio when the car is off. So what that's telling me is we need to find another area of the car's harness. In this particular case, it might be different for you, to go ahead and tap that yellow battery wire into that wire of the car's harness to get that constant battery feed. So since I'm already tapping into the power headlight switch here, the green wire that's going into the harness here is your ignition, and then this red wire right here where my finger is, that is actually the constant battery supply in this scenario. I just tested a ground and that, and noticed that when the car's ignition is off, the red wire is giving a constant battery charge voltage. So we're gonna tap into the red wire for the battery wire, and then the green wire for the ignition over here. So I'm gonna go ahead now and kind of put you on like a fast forward, and what we're gonna do is simplify the harness that we have right there. We're gonna cut all the wires out that we don't need to clean it up a little bit. And then since the Metra kind of goes right into the factory harness, and we can disconnect it, what I'm going to do when I tap here is I'm going to tap it in, run the wires out over here, and then what I'm going to do is create an attachment, a plug-in for both of those wires here on this side. So if we need to ever take the radio out, we can just disconnect with the plug, just like we do with this harness from over here. So that's what we're going to do right now on fast forward. Okay guys, so I tapped into the battery wire and the ignition wire. I hooked up quick disconnects and connects over here for the positive and for the battery wire, which are going over there. And as you can see, the radio is working. Now the only thing that's not finished, which I'm waiting for, which is a switch, is for the ground wire to attach here. This is the ground wire, which I'll attach to the ground, and then I'll have a switch here that's going to turn on and off to trick the system into allowing me access to the settings while driving. So in the meantime, right now, since I don't have everything hooked up, you can see that I can't get into the Bluetooth settings, but I have the ground wire here, and I'm just going to touch it on the ground twice and keep it on the ground wire. And as you can see there, when I do that, it allows me to have access. So everything is now working, and this is going to be the final resting place of most of the wires. I obviously have to organize the bundling and tuck it back there a little bit nicer when we go to install, but everything is functioning, which is perfect. The radio is not working 100% because I don't have the antenna hooked up quite yet. So there we go. Now the only thing I want to just test is the battery. We hooked up the battery to the wire here, which is this yellow battery here, this yellow wire. So let's test it, see if the settings remain when I turn the key off. No more pops, no more white noises in the speakers, as you can see. And obviously, once we're finalized of testing everything, making sure it works, I'll go in and solder everything up, and there you go. The battery wire is working properly there. I turned the car off and on. It didn't ask me for a prompt of the English setting, which means it saved everything, which is awesome. So that is good. That is a big accomplishment there, guys. We got everything situated now. So the next thing I'm gonna do is I'm waiting for the switch to come in today with Amazon. I really hope all this is really clear. It's a lot going on here, obviously. A lot of different wires, as I mentioned earlier, and I didn't even get into the hand control module yet, and I didn't even get into doing the reverse camera or any of that stuff. So pretty big video here. Got to wire up. We got the Bluetooth microphone wired in, as you just saw. Now we're gonna go ahead and start to organize the reverse camera. So this is how this goes. This here is a long wire that will go to the back of the car. This is the camera. All right, so the camera has a positive power and the RCA cable that gives the video feed, which is right here. guys, so as noted previously, somebody had previously had a reverse camera hooked up, so we just tapped right back into it. I respliced this as you saw on camera. I fished everything nicely through here, which took some work, but we got it done. So now once this is tested, which I'm about to go do, we'll tidy this all up and put it in its final resting place. But in the meantime, let's see if we are getting the reverse camera. On this camera, there's a front camera hookup and a rear, so make sure you just hook it up accordingly. So we got power.
We're carefully monitoring the rapid evolution of the...
And of course it saved our settings, which put this thing in reverse. And there is nothing. So let's check that out as to why. Alright, quick update. I broke the harness to the reverse camera, so I need to get a new one, but all the wiring is in place. Not really too concerned about the reverse camera because after all, it's not the most important thing in the world. Going into the car now, and this is the last step really till final assembly, is we have everything properly working now with the radio, which is awesome. And in the interim, my switches came in, and pretty much you have a ground wire, the ground wire here, and then you have the wire that goes to the radio. That's what's going on here. So when I hit this twice, it allows me, see? And if I click it, it turns it off. And there it is, on, off. So this is gonna live kind of like right here, and that's the way that's gonna be. So everything's perfect now, except for the AFM radio, which we're waiting for, and then I gotta wire in and figure out the system for the buttons on the steering wheel. But I'm not worried about that yet. Just getting all the functionality of the radio down pat was the most important thing, and we are good to go. So I'm gonna go ahead and solder everything up and then slowly assemble the radio, and then we'll do the steering wheel controls. All right. So before we go ahead and start to really finalize, let's just make sure everything's working. It's a lot of work, guys.
This state-of-the-art space with working display.
All right, now our settings. There we go. Everything's working. One more time, make sure it's saved with the battery line, make sure it's all done right. And we're good.
Ridgedale Avenue.
Cool. So just a couple little things I'm gonna tidy up here now is I wanna get the USB port kind of installed in this little slot there. And then also I would like to see, I would like to also work on the hands-free, the button setup there. So let's get into that next. All right, boys, so just an update. I put the USB port right here. I cracked the plastic because unfortunately the previous owner here who did have this radio in modified before had some glue, but it's in there with some double-sided tape, and I just tested the Android app with the Android Auto. All of it is working. My Spotify, Pandora, and Google Maps all worked properly. Also, while I was sitting here, I got my antenna adapter in, so I'm just gonna finish taping that together once I finalize the steering control module. So we are on the grand finale here of getting this thing finished. So just a little update for you on all of that. All right, boys, so for the hands-free unit here, we need the blue wire here for, excuse me, we need the white wire here for the blue wire on the SID, and then we have this wire here, which just plugs into the back of the radio next to where the microphone plugs into. And then we have a ground and a positive feed. So what I'm gonna do is tap all the wire harnesses that we have situated here, the grounds and the positives and all that good stuff. And then we'll just program this thing. I got the instructions right here on from the website, and we'll just get things done. All right, guys, in this segment, we are gonna program the power steering wheel controls, hopefully. So let's do this here. Turn the ignition to the on. LED light will illuminate red, which it has done. And then it says, press and hold the programming button on the left side of the interface until the LED illuminates green. Release the programming button. Within 7 seconds, press the steering wheel to be learned on the steering wheel. Okay, so the SWC can always be restored to be full. Okay. All right, guys, so we got the pack steering wheel controls scheduled with the Alpine just by following the directions on this sheet here. So as you can see, volume up, volume down. Then we got our source button, which is not working, so I got to go back in there and do that. The source button went to the AM FM. All right, so it's working. I just got to reprogram it to properly work here in the current situation, and then wrap this up. All right, just to end this video off, guys, on the programming of the hand controls here. When I programmed, you have to hold down this until it turns green. Just follow the instructions. Okay. And really what happens is on this particular radio, on the Alpine, you have volume, mute, preset, source, etc., right? So what I did to program everything was I held down the volume, I skipped the mute, and then for the presets, I held down the seek button on the top and the bottom for that to program it, and then I went to source, I skipped track, and I skipped the rest, and it worked. So now when I hold down the volume, we got volume. Source, we got source. And then when I hold down the seek button, like this, you'll see that it goes to my presets on the screen. So we are fully programmed here. A little patience here, a little trial and error, but it's not that hard to do if you're following the instructions. You do have to get other fillers in here because this isn't 100% even the way it's set up, but for now it is good enough. So I'm excited to announce that all of the Bluetooth settings are working. And if I just click over here twice, it will let me into my settings, which is pretty neat. And of course, our Android Auto does work, so that is good. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. There was a lot of work here, and I hope I captured all of the details properly in this install. Obviously, if I would have had a CD player in here, this would have filled out the gap a little bit nicer. And I will link everything, like I said, in the description below. So please be sure to give this video a like, subscribe, comment below, and of course, follow me at Pancis if you guys have any questions or want to reach out to me regarding a project you are working on. Stay tuned for more, guys.